Hello. I completed the 100 Heads Challenge, a challenge in which you draw 100 heads over the course of 10 days, usually equating to about 10 heads every day. This challenge was created by Ahmed Al-Douri about 6 or 7 years ago. I've probably butchered his name, but I'm sure we'll all survive that. I chose to copy him by both A, using the same Pinterest board that he used for the challenge, and B, following that Pinterest board from bottom to top, in order. My goal with doing the 100 Heads Challenge, because I kind of think everyone should go into it with some sort of goal, was to practice capturing the likeness of my models as well as getting their proportions right, because I've never really enjoyed portraiture before, so naturally doing 100 seemed like the correct thing to do. Alright. I started day one by watching a tutorial on how to draw heads, because as I just mentioned, I didn't have very much experience with actually drawing faces. So for that, I watched A Gentle Guide to Drawing Faces by Jane Beta? By Jane. And I did a half-hearted warm-up because that's what all the experts seem to suggest. And at the end of the session, I came to the conclusion that drawing 10 heads is a lot. I did better than I expected, and all the heads looked distinct, which was nice. You know, the better than I expected. I only recorded the first 4 heads, I think it was 4. But my favourite was the Jughead one, which I did not record me doing, but you'll see during the flip through in a moment. I think that was all for day 1, so we'll move on to day 2. Day 2 took me a lot longer to get started. Day 1 took 2.5 hours in total for me to draw the 10 heads, and that is a long time to dedicate to drawing every single day. So on day 2, by the time I started at like 11:15 at night, I decided that I'd spend 10 minutes approximately on each head. Or I'd try to spend 10 minutes on each head anyway. Another thing I did to make the second day easier was after I finished recording, I started playing music. And I just danced to some music while I was drawing, you know, just do, as you do. And that really helped, actually. That helped me a lot more than I expected it would. Because by the end, by the time I finished head 20, I stood up in the middle of my room and I just danced until the end of the song. So clearly having music playing while I did the heads was a great idea. Definitely got the dopamine going. Of course, that could have been a number of factors, considering with the last head, I actually managed to finish it within the 10 minutes I set out for, as well as it was the very last head. So it was the achievement of, yay, I'm finished for the day. And I had the really good music that I just wanted to get up and dance to. And by that point, it was nearly 1:30 at night, and so I was overtired, probably. It's like 2 hours past my general bedtime. It also could have been that I just really liked drawing those male sculptures at that point. I just found them so invigorating. I'm not sure if invigorating is the right word. I don't know what invigorating means exactly. But that could have contributed as well. And on that note, head 20 was my favorite head. The entire drawing, that's still now, after drawing all 100 heads, head 20 is my favorite. By day 3, I was still dreading starting the 10 heads. However, by the time I got to like head 3 or head 4, I was quite happy and in the rhythm. I also usually stopped recording at head 3 or 4, so perhaps the fact that I could put on the music and listen to the music once again probably helped with that. On day 4, I decided to start drawing pretty much as soon as I got out of bed, because I got out of bed about 50 minutes earlier than I needed to. And so I spent the first 45 minutes of my day drawing the first 3 heads that I needed. And by 9 a.m. that morning, I was ready for a road trip I went on to go see some mountains several hours away from where I live. And they were really pretty. I think I just like looking at nature. It's just so beautiful, you know? And then as soon as I got back from that road trip, I sat down and I did my last 7 heads for the day, which took me just over an hour. Overall, it only took me 2 hours to do the full 10 heads. And that, I was quite happy with that as well. Although I don't know whether to attribute that to me getting into the rhythm of drawing the heads or to me being lazy. or to me having higher energy levels because it wasn't already my bedtime by the time I was doing the heads. It could be any of those reasons. Although I can say that head 40 annoyed me. I'm not very good at drawing open mouths, and then the scrunched up face and all the details. It had all of the things that made a face hard for me to draw, and so it didn't make me very happy. But with head 40 done, that would bring us on to day 5. On day 5, I got 3 heads done pretty much first thing in the morning, although I spent 15 to 20 minutes on each. So I spent an hour almost on that session and only got 3 heads done. And then my iPad died, so the rest of the heads had to wait for later in the day. Now, of course, Tuesdays are really busy for me, so later in the day ended up being pretty much at bedtime again, and at that point I was sick of depriving myself of sleep. So I only did 2 more heads that day for a total of 5 on day 5. That works. And I left the other 5 to be caught up on the next 5 days. How many times can you say 5 in a sentence? Which brings us to day 6, wherein I did 12 heads that day. I was aiming for anywhere from 10 to 14, because if I only did 10, then at least I wasn't adding to the amount I had to catch up. And if I did 14, then, well, I'd have a lot less heads to catch up in the future. But I did 12 that day. And I really liked the zen, the kind of zen headspace that I'd get into whenever I was drawing the heads for so long. It was just one line after another until I realized the head was finished. And that was so nice. Sometimes it felt like I was holding the pen, but the picture was just appearing underneath it. It's the closest I've ever come to understanding what an author means when they say something like, the story wrote itself, or the character took over. But most of the time it still required a lot of active thought and decision making, especially some, like number 55, where it required lots of thought, 2 redos, and a notable level of annoyance. But even 55 got done to a degree in which I was satisfied, so... On day 7 I only did 1 head. That's because Thursday was even busier for me than any other day of the week had been. I can't remember what I was doing, I just remember that it was busy. So I didn't have time to do any more than that, and I valued getting enough sleep over finishing the correct amount of heads, because I knew that I had the weekend wherein I'd have enough time to catch up on the heads. On day 8, I did not record as much of my drawing process. It seemed like the world was very much against me recording that day, because for head 1, it all went fine. I even got into my Zenish flow already, just in head 1. However, in head 2, things started going awry. First, my mother called me to let me know that she was home partway through the head, which I expected and was perfectly fine. And so I sat down again to continue drawing the second head, and then I was called again. This time to test whether the noodles were cooked and help cook the noodles. And so I did that, and then I came back to my desk, and I continued recording, and I finally finished head 2. And I started head 3, and then my phone just stopped recording. For no reason, halfway through head 3. And when I realized that after finishing head 3, I decided I just wasn't meant to record on day 8. It was clear. It's written in the stars. But in that drawing session, I did complete heads 60 through 66, I believe. And then I did a second drawing session later in that day, after I had finished editing the video for that week, which would have come out last week by now. And then when I went for my second drawing session, I decided to watch my favourite Tom Hiddleston interview from 12 or so years ago, naturally. And I drew heads 67 through 72. So I got 13 heads done that day. On day 9, I got 10 heads done over the course of 2 different drawing sessions. I did 4 in the early afternoon, which took me 45 minutes, with 76 being the quickest by far. And then I finished another 6 when I got home from an event that night. And for about half of that second session, the first 3 heads, I listened to music, and then for the last 3 heads, I watched another Tom Hiddleston interview that I like. This one's only 6 or 8 years old. And then I went to bed, and we move on to day 10. By day 10, I had realized that my favorite amounts of heads to draw at any given time were 6. 6 in one sitting was good. 4 was a preference, but 6 I could do pretty well. So, with 18 heads left before I could possibly reach 100, I split all of my drawing that day into 3 different sessions. One in the morning, one in the afternoon, and one before bed. The first session was 6 heads, wherein for the first 4 I recorded my drawing process, and then for the next 2 I listened to music, and I just vibed. It was very nice. I like how, I've said it a lot of times and I'll say it again, I like how it brings me out of my head. In the second session I only managed 4. I had intended to do a full 6, however I ended up getting interrupted and having to do some other time sensitive things, and then I had a social commitment to get to before I could finish it. So I only did 4 in that session. But as soon as I finished that social commitment at like 10 o'clock at night, I sat down and I finished the last 8 heads that I had for the 100 head challenge. Of which, once again, for half of it, I listened to music, the first 4 heads, and then for the second half of it, I watched my favourite Tom Hiddleston interview again, the one from 12 years ago. I found rewatching interviews and listening to music were good things for me to do in the background while I did the heads, because I already knew everything it said. I didn't have to take my concentration off because I wasn't learning anything new from them. It was just that familiarity of sound to keep me comfortable and satisfied, you know? Now, I did consider recording my drawing process for the last head, for head 100, but I opted instead to stay comfortable and just get it done. And I can confirm that by the end of the day, when I had finished drawing the 18th head of that day and the 100th head within the last 10 days, my head only slightly felt like it was about to explode. Bang. And that's it. Challenge complete. My goal was to practice capturing the likeness of the model, as well as practice doing proportions for faces to make them look kind of mostly right. And I feel like I did achieve that goal throughout this challenge. And I found enough enjoyment in drawing the 100 heads and in the process that I think I would do this challenge again, though not for a while. I do like having free time. I think it would be good and constructive for me to add into my routine something like drawing 2 to 4 portraits every day, although I'm recording this outro on day 3 after finishing the challenge and I still haven't drawn a single head since finishing it. But I do think it would be a good idea for me to implement drawing 2 to 4 heads a day, because I did enjoy it and it would help me maintain any progress I made over the last 10 days. Would I recommend this challenge to you? If you have 2.5 to 3 hours to spare every day for 10 days in a row, then yes, I would absolutely recommend this challenge. I think it really is beneficial and I enjoyed it. If you do not have that sort of time, or you have half that amount of time, I would recommend potentially doing 100 heads over 20 days instead, or over 30 days if that's easier for you, or even adding break days in between and breaking it up a little bit, as long as you don't have more than 1 consecutive break day, because it screws with the flow, I feel like, when you're doing a challenge. But your circumstances are your own, and I can't judge whether or not something is suited for you. If you've enjoyed hearing me talk about my experience with the 100 Heads Drawing Challenge, then you might also enjoy this video here, wherein I talk about my experience doing 1 hour of gesture every day for 6 months. And I help you decide whether it's a challenge suited to you. Bye!